Welcome to Woman On. I'm your host, Maxie McCoy, and this season we're talking to the women and the people making 2020 actually somewhat inspiring. Remember, if you love what you're hearing on this show, you can get free worksheets with each episode. Go to womanonccollective.com/worksheet. And if you're an ultimate Woman On fan, you can join our exclusive sessions where we learn how to apply the wisdom that you're hearing here into our own lives. Find out more at womanonccollective.com. All right, my next guest, it's Jodie Patterson, a mother of 5, an entrepreneur a few times over, and the chair of the board of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, which is America's largest LGBT advocacy group. She's also the author of The Bold World, a memoir of family and transformation. That book is so good. Please read it now. So I met Jodie one night in 2016, so a while ago, when we happened to be seated next to each other at a work dinner, which was the ultimate jackpot, mainly for me. There was so much I wanted to know from Jodie at that time. What raising 5 kids was like, what running her businesses were like, while also showing up as glowing and powerful and wise through it all. What was that like? I had a lot of questions, and they pretty much all revolved around being a mom and. My questions around motherhood, they were probably coming from my fear of it, if we're being totally honest, a fear of having so many responsibilities, to be so much for so many. And as I sit with you here today, I still have some of those fears, especially when I look at the numbers happening this year around the care crisis in this country right now. Over 800,000 women have left the workforce in 2020. 1 in 4 women right now is considering downshifting their career because of the outsized burdens of work and caretaking. This episode's conversation made me feel so much better, believe it or not, about those fears and about those numbers, because as you'll see, we don't need to be afraid of motherhood, but should instead turn towards it, no matter what our child rearing sitch looks like. As you'll see in this interview, Jodie explains how mothering can be the answer, how kids or no kids, our world would be a better place if we choose to mother something. Our community, our neighbors, young children, other humans, and how to be just 1% better every day. I don't think any of us knows what the future looks like, but it can definitely be more inclusive and more loving if we take a page out of Jodie's book, both metaphorical and literal, and add a dash of mothering into all that we do. Here's Jodie Patterson on mothering our way forward.
I want to start where your book ended, actually. And the final line says, "I, woman, control this spot." What does that look like for you today?
You know, that's one of my favorite parts of the book, the last chapter. And it was such a process getting to the point of writing the last chapter, but also getting to the point of living that moment in the book, which, you know, obviously is not the last chapter of my life.
Yeah.
But that phrase, "I, woman, control this spot," came from a bishop. I met a bishop. I was at church one day. I was feeling really low. And after church, I can't remember the service itself, but after church, I just sat in my seat and a woman came up to me, an older woman. And we started talking, and she said, and I want to quote her, but it sounds so unbelievable. She goes, "You know, I think all of us are whores." Yeah. And to this day, I still don't know what that means. She was.
Wait, what do you think she meant?
I'm not going to try to understand that, because sometimes I don't understand, but it got my attention clearly, right? So she goes, "All of us are whores." And then she tells me some very intimate pieces about her life. And I tell her some very intimate pieces about my life and how I was going through a separation and how I was having difficulty understanding my children and how I was not quite fully aware of path I was on. And I told her about the 2 marriages and the 5 children and still feeling stuck. And so she says, there's a phrase that I use, I woman control this spot. And she said, it actually comes from a Jamaican phrase, which is quite sexist. I man control this, fill in the blank, this goat, this woman, this house, this property. But she's flipped it and says, I woman control this spot. And she says, Jodie, this spot is your brain, your heart, your vagina, your womb, your mind. And so I put that in my notes section of my phone. And I sat on that for months. I woman control this spot. And that became the closing sentiment of my book.
Yeah.
And what it looks like today is, I was just talking about this yesterday. I am clearly not, where no one's in the perfect zone, but I'm in this place where I feel like I can be more bold in the way I insert myself in life. So I find that I still have these anxiety moments and I still have these tearful moments, but when I look up, I'm like, oh, I am actually chair of the board of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. I'm actually providing for my household, my 5 children. I'm the head of the household. I'm an author, right? Published author. Things that I had never done before, never even dreamed of doing before. I now can put myself in there, and I put myself in there like I put myself in there, like it's me. And I have thought about this. How much do we rely on people? Well, we have family, we have chosen family, we have community, really important. But every big move I've made, I've had to muster up this idea that I woman. So it looks like, movement. It looks like visibility. Yeah.
When I read it, and I reread it, obviously coming back into this interview, and you just feel it from head to toe. It's like I'm so much bigger than what the world is telling me or my world in my head is telling me. And, I appreciate what you're mentioning about the down moments, the anxious moments, the lows, because I think that there's a lot of that happening all year. And you just mentioned movement, but how do you come, what is your practice to come from those moments of down to come back up and see all that you are and all that you've done and how to own that spot? What does it look like?
And these moments, some of them are small little dips, speed bumps, and some of them are massive, like fissures, like massive tears, sinkholes. I've been calling them sinkholes. I had COVID in March. I was separated from my kids. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks in Vegas. I went to a trip to work to speak in Vegas and never came home. I landed in the hospital for 2 weeks with no one there, no advocate, no friend, no family, just early. This was when I was patient number 3 in the state of Nevada. It was so early that we're saying we're gonna have to burn your clothing, burn your computer, burn all of your possessions. Like, what is going on? What's going on? And so this is that was a big sinkhole. And I think we have to understand that sinkholes are inevitable. And we don't really no one tells us that, no one teaches us that. We, most of the major disasters of our life, we think maybe we've had some influence over them, like a divorce, maybe. Or a sickness of our own, right? But sinkholes are inevitable. They just happen. And so I've been trying to figure out what the upside is. Like, what is the upside in the sinkhole? Because they come, so we got to get used to them. Then we have to master them. And then we have to master this idea of finding the upside. Like, they're totally turned upside down. Where is up? Oh, I got it. Okay. Yep. And so I run. Yeah. I try to run. That makes me feel a lot more limber, graceful, powerful.
Do you let yourself sink before you try and figure out where up is?
I don't want to sink, and I don't even most of the time, but I think we're fighting it, but it is inevitable. I just, the more I was retracing my steps on some of these really low moments, And yes, I could have been more into self-care at the moment, and maybe the sinkhole would have been delayed a little bit. But I think these sinkholes, they just happen and you will not know up from down. And then the practice that I've gotten used to now is like, okay, just sort of acknowledging it, experiencing it. And then I have this insight now, clearly, that things will shift again, right?
Yeah.
You will find the up. So I'm not sure if I'm fighting it. I'm just thinking, I think I'm allowing it, kind of.
Allowing it. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate what you say too about they're inevitable and they've happened before and they're going to happen again. But the beauty of that pattern is that, you get out of it eventually, and you learn the tools and the people and the, more than anything, just probably the mindset of how to come back into, owning your spot in the world. I want to talk about that spot, the many places in this world that you live, because they matter so much to those of us who know you and who follow you and are constantly inspired by the work that you are doing in this world, which I know probably doesn't make the sinkholes any easier, but there's an output of good. And for you, you're a mother of 5 humans, and mothering is something that goes so far beyond those humans. It's kind of how we show up in the world, and motherhood is very core to so much of what you do. And I'm curious for you how you define mothering in general, whether like with kids or without it.
Well, so there's much of my life I was thinking mothering is biological mothering, or mothering an adult, mothering a small person by either choice, chosen family, or biology. But I was thinking of it as a woman, big person, mothering small people. And I've had a great mom, I've had a great grandmother, a very beautiful great grandmother. I've been raised by a lot of great women. And recently I've been thinking about mothering as building, as architect. So there are, there's mothering that is, warm and supportive and affirmative, and that's mothering. The mothering that I've been thinking about recently is more architectural. So, and it can be by, it's not specific to gender or race or identity or class privilege. Because a lot of times when we talk about parenting and mothering, there's an implication that we're talking about white, cis-normative, heteronormative, wealthy, big people raising little people.
Yep.
And so that's not what I'm talking about, because I've seen some of the best mothering done by trans folk, queer people, brothers, right? So the mothering I'm talking about is when it's a leadership building tactic. And it takes a look at the situation, the family, the community, from a bird's eye view. You get above the energy a little bit. And then you look at it 3D and you see all of the parts, like as if you were building something, right? What is structural here? People are structural. You have to see them clearly as they are. You cannot get rid of the structure. But what's aesthetic, and what can you shift around? Oh, language, dress, presentation. So I've been thinking about how do we leaders, and I'm saying mother, right? Leader and mother, build up a child, or build up a family, or build up a community. And I've been looking at not a lot, but I've been thinking and looking at some architectural books and some city planning discussions. When you look at how cities do well or how cities fail, like New York was a colossal failure for a while. Lots of people, let's build more highways to make efficiency the answer. And it just never worked. Then they took the highways and they made them into parks. And they made Times Square into a square.
Wait,
and
I didn't know this.
And that's what made it better. Not the efficiency, but the opening of communal spaces. And so I've been thinking a lot about mothering in terms of city planning. How do we organize so that most of the family's time is spent in common places, like making my kitchen feel like a library. All are welcome, right?
Mm.
Regardless of your starting point.
Coming over, Jodie.
Yeah. And I have chargers everywhere in the kitchen because people want to like dock in, but it's like a subversive way.
Wait, that is so smart. Be where the chargers are. Get the kids and the humans to you by putting a charger around.
So this for me is mothering. I mean, I think of it as building communities, building children up. The way you would, with strategy, the kind of strategy put behind trying to organize diverse people, right?
Yeah.
Because even in our own homes, we have real deep differences, right? The same way we do in cities and in the world. So like my family needs city planning.
What is that actually? How do you accomplish that? Like, or have there been small changes that you have made? Your family has gone through such beautiful transformation over the years, and I'm sure in that beauty has not always been ease. But what have you done to facilitate that building? Well,
the first step I did was I worked on some things on myself. So I had to untether.
Yeah.
When I talk about getting above the energy, that was something that I had to do on myself. So I was way in the energy. I was like deep in the weeds, right? So I had to untether as a woman and as a mother. And that's really difficult because women are taught as early as we can walk to stay close to the family and build your strength around the family. So untethering is something I think is important first. It's different for each woman, but you look at what defines you. Not like, you look at what defines you. So my children define me, my spouse defines me, being efficient defines me, being accountable. So for better or for worse, what are the things that you judge yourself on? And then you take them and you cut them. You literally cut them. So these are like your umbilical cords, and so now my kids, they're a major part of how I define myself, but you cannot stay in that all the time. So now they go to their dad's house for an entire month. And then they come back to me for a month. But in the month that my children are gone, I don't have to mother. I don't have to be present. And so that was like life-changing for me. But that might not be the umbilical cord for every person. So you have to figure out what matters most, and then you cut it, and you feel
like I feel that in my like sacral energy, like, oh no.
Right. So if like those 5 things that define you feel like the safe zone, untethering feels like the danger zone. Mm-hmm. And so you have to spend time there. And what happens, and I can't tell you the science behind it, but what happens is you come out with more resources, and you actually go back to all those things. You don't like sever them forever. You just detach, find new resources, and then you go back to the things that you love: your spouse, your kids, your home, your whatever. Yeah. So that was one of the things. I had to be an untethered woman to build this team better.
An untethered woman. How long did it take you to get there?
Oh shit, I've been working on this for years.
But he's like, how much time you got, Max?
The sinkhole kicked my ass in 2014, maybe 2015, 2016 was still real rough. I think I started to intentionally untether, because the sinkhole will make you untether too. It'll just rip you apart from things. And then I started to intentionally untether.
Can you tell us, and I know you write about this in The Bold World, which my prayer is that every human reads this book. It's so beautiful. And I can you tell those who haven't read it yet about that sinkhole?
Yeah. Well, it's such a long, robust story, and sometimes people presume that The Bold World is about my child who's trans. I've had a lot of public, sort of attention around my child who's trans, and the book is actually about my life as a cisgender woman, realizing that there's something in this world that I don't even know an inkling about. And there are many things that I just didn't know an inkling about. So by maybe 14, I had 5 children. 1 from my first marriage, 3 from my second marriage, and 1 adopted. I had been married twice. I had done 9 different careers, 17 different homes. I mean, I was a highly fast-paced woman.
Doing
multiple.
the most.
I was doing the most. I had a beauty company, another beauty company, a PR company, a nightclub, just doing a lot. And I thought that was how women got shit done, right? Because all of the women in my family have done massive things in life. And then my 3rd child started to show signs of stress and sadness and anger, nail biting by 2, bedwetting constantly, reoccurring nightmares, fingers bloody from nail biting. And all of this body stress, like if I had to change Penelope didn't want to be touched. If I had to brush Penelope's hair, Penelope would, swat the hairbrush away. Brushing teeth, brushing hair, getting dressed. And then Penelope became a bully. So pushing siblings, pushing friends at the park. And so like I was trying to figure out, because I'm a doer, how do we fix this? Right? Maybe it's like I forgot to read nighttime stories. Maybe Penelope's not feeling
Was
loved.
I working, like what, all the tropes?
I even thought of allergy. I was like, maybe it's the food. Maybe Penelope needs cleaned up. And then one day I just asked Penelope, why are you so angry? Really, why are you angry? And Penelope said, because everyone thinks I'm a girl. And I'm not, I'm a boy. And so the first thing I thought was, oh, here's a feminist and she wants to be seen as tough and she understands that the world looks at boys differently than girls. And I, in solidarity, I was like, Penelope, however you feel, it's fine. If you feel like your brothers, you act like them, it's fine. And Penelope quickly corrected me and said, no, Mama, I don't feel like a boy, I am a boy. What does that mean? And then I just kind of didn't say anything for minutes. And Penelope said, I love you, Mama. I don't want to be you. I want to be Papa. I want to be Papa. And then spent an hour just telling me what was in his brain, all the things that I had missed, all the things that I had miscalculated. I thought they were like just a grumpy kid, but this was like Penelope trying to show me, I don't want the pink shirt. I want the blue shirt. I don't want the butterflies on my diapers. I want the superheroes. I want the trucks. So everything that Penelope was breaking or throwing, this was his communication of like, don't gender me in that way, because everything. And those years after that, I tried to figure out, it took years to really build up my understanding of gender and gender fluidity and gender diversity. And I spent a lot of time researching. And then at some point I just said, like F the research, it just takes a yes to keep my kid alive, happy.
Like, well,
and so now we're at 12 and he's like valedictorian of his class and he's a super student, super kid, super brother.
And that was, I appreciate what you say too about people's perception of that, of your family experience and Penelope's experience of, the book being about that, but the way that I have read it and have interpreted all of the work is like, that was a catalyst for your own transformation to come back probably to the untethering and to you. I don't want to project that there's life before and after an experience like that. And I also know that transformation does those things to us. And what is what gems have come from that experience as a family? Did it teach you about mothering and how you would take that beyond the home? What is still there for you?
The first thing, and just to go back to it one last time, because I really think it's important, Penelope taught me to untether. Untethering from expectations, from cultural norms, from what people tell you should do, should be, should say. So that was the first takeaway. That it took me a while to get it, but Penelope really taught me untethering. I also learned we have to raise our kids to be activists. And when I say raise our kids, then we also have to take on that responsibility as the adult. Yep. We're raising activists. My dad used to say, you're not born to be pretty. You're born to be powerful. You're born to change the status quo. and you're born to dream forward, period.
Mm.
So that was something I really tried to give my kids, like, okay, F the pretty, F the polite. And I struggle with that because I do want respectful kids, and I want people to like listen and not talk when I'm talking. And my mind, if you start raising activists, they will speak up on everything. Everything. But bottom line is we're raising activists. We really need to raise our children. If you look at this moment, like this moment, we need to be very clear on an activist. Like we spot, like an activist is someone who sees something, it registers as wrong, and then you do something about it. And that's what we need.
Love what you're hearing? Well, you get to really dive in by joining the 10-week collective, where you'll be put into small groups that meet every week for the entire season, led by one of our brilliant woman-on leaders. They're so brilliant, you're going to love them. We break down the episode themes together every week. We discuss, we learn from each other. It's seriously so fun. And there's some super cozy merch that's exclusive to the collective. That's the Woman On World. We really hope that you'll join us. Now, let's get back to the convo.
In those moments of teaching those, and I know that you just said it comes from us doing the work. And what are the micro moments that happen at home where you are instilling activism in them?
One day I was picking up my kids from school, and I needed a coffee. It's like 4:00 in the evening, early evening. I need my coffee, so I stopped at the coffee shop, injected me with some caffeine, and my kid says, he's probably 10 or 11 at the time. He goes, "Well, can I get a chai latte or cappuccino?" I said, no caffeine for you. And then he said, "Well, why not? That's not fair. There's caffeine in soda. There's caffeine in," and he gave me a list of things that have
green
caffeine.
Tea, Jodie has caffeine.
Like he said, it's just not, the distribution of caffeine is not fair in the family. Like you can't hold on. And so I said, "Well, listen, kid, I'll think about it and I'll get back to you." He said, "Well, I'm not going to get out of the car until we have a solid plan on caffeine." and that was, he sat in the car from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 10 hours in the car.
Stop it.
And we live in Brooklyn. Like we're not in the suburbs. We live in Bed-Stuy. So the sun set. We had dinner. We brought dinner out to the car with him. All the brothers, we ate with him. Then we brought our pajamas and we slept in the car with him. And it wasn't until about midnight I said, "Babe, I think we can do this sit-in in the house. It's a little dangerous out here." Yeah. But he really said, "I want you to understand that I need you to take action on this. I need you to not put this off till next week. I need to clearly understand your plan moving forward for coffee distribution in the house." So it was, it's silly because he still is not allowed to drink coffee.
Yeah, I did want to know, like, where did we net out on the plan?
We netted out on like high school. So actually this year he's in 9th grade. He can try it. Okay. And he might have, had it on his own without me, but I appreciated the determination. I appreciated the longevity. He was not going to budge, and he wasn't being disrespectful. He actually just said, "Take your time. But the longer, as you take that time, I'm going to be sitting here just so you realize how much time you're taking." And so, I did not punish him for it. I did not get angry. In fact, the other brothers came and we sat out with him and we protested with him, even though I was on the other side of the debate. We brought our blankets and we protested with him. Those are the small things. When you're raising activists, it's not convenient.
Yeah.
It's not convenient.
There's nothing easy about it.
Mm-mm.
As you talk about mothering, one of the things that I remember in first meeting you actually is a conversation about your kids, but also about the fear that I had around these moments of how do you raise really good children. And by good, I mean activists, people who are showing up for equality and inclusivity in this world from day one. And also the fear in fucking that up. For me personally, the fear in not being able to do the career piece and the mothering piece. And then when I was, reading about the fear that you had, you were, I think at Zach Posen, right? And first pregnant and just, I can't do this because I have a 5-floor walk up.
Oh, that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it was just, I think it's so relatable about what so many people feel in this world, and especially how hard this world is and getting harder about bringing children into it. Do you feel like that fear is valid? And, or what do you say to those people who are still kind of holding that about bringing, young people into the world?
Yeah, scary.
Yeah.
I'm so deep in my motherhood. My oldest is 28, then 21, 14, 12, and 11. So I almost can't remember
those moments.
The life. I can't quite recall ever contemplating, do I want? I've always wanted and then had, right? And it was never a question for if I was going to have kids or not. I really, from as far back as I can remember, wanted to be a mother. And my daughter said to me several years ago that she wasn't sure she wanted to be a mother. And I was like, oh God, stab me in the heart. I want to be a grandmother to her so badly. Not now, but I mean, something I look forward to. And she said, I'm just not sure. I get it. I understand it intellectually. And I think whether we biologically have children or adopt children and become legal parents, I think the process of mothering is important. Mother something, mother someone, mother a community. We don't have anything that is as important to me as mothering. And that is, whether you decide to push a baby out of your body, whether you decide to adopt some being that's already here on earth, or whether you decide to take on like a chosen family. I think the process of mothering is essential. It's leadership that it's building. And it is the answer, actually. I mean, the fear is like, this world is so crazy. These white men are so crazy. And these systems are so broken. And there's so many darts coming at me. And the thing I think is the answer to that is to mother your community, right? And build it up and like fortify us. So I think that is an answer. I don't think that I think that not mothering is like allows this to just get worse. It doesn't stop it. Like, I think this idea that we have to have more life, we have to have more unity, we have to have more compassion, we have to have more strategy. Yeah. Even if you're not a warm and snuggly type of person, like even if you don't want a little baby to cuddle, if that's not your jam, I'm talking about like mothering as like fortifying. And that I think is like the answer to the situation of the sinkhole that we're in right now.
And that's another thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I did read you saying that like mothering is the answer to the structural issues, to our community and our localized issues, to the fucking patriarchy. And I want to know who you look to, because we look to you, I look to you. But I want to know who you look to as like, that is such a beautiful example of mothering a community, because I think, we are shifting, even as you're talking about it, we're shifting our understanding of what mothering is, right? Like, it's just what you said, it is building, it is fortifying to the future we all know can be possible, but is going to take a lot of undoing from myself and others, and a lot of rebuilding. And who do you look to? Who are the people that inspire you in the way that they mother?
I ironically look to a lot of activists, civil rights activists, I recently rewatched the Black Panther documentary by Stanley Nelson on PBS. Just to look at like, what were the 10 principles, right? They're so similar to what parents are asking for today, like education, not indoctrination, but real education, housing, jobs, food. Like I had to go back to what seemed so radical, right, in the 60s.
And it's the
like,
fucking basic.
Radical Panthers. And it's literally what families in the suburbs, in the cities, all over the world need, right? So I went back to the Black Panther documentary on PBS, Assata Shakur, James Baldwin, like his book, The Fire Next Time, is just timeless in terms of how America has treated people and how if we don't connect the dots between oppression, we will just never get it. It'll be cyclical. If it's not a Black man, then it'll be a trans woman. If it's not a trans woman, then it'll be a Mexican, you know, if it's not a Mexican mom, it'll be like, we have to look at the people who've come before us who are critical thinkers around oppression and around coming out of oppression. And really those have been Black folk. Like just look to the Black revolutionaries for a way out at this point.
Let them leave.
My grandmother, civil rights activist, I think about her a lot. She was dubbed Revolution. Gloria, yeah. Gloria. Yeah. Yeah. You know, she sued school boards and sued hospitals and won the court cases and changed the segregated South. And this was like when we weren't even acknowledging a Black woman's genius. So she just clawed her way through that system. And then I read, you know, sometimes I'm reading things about like couples. Like this is a great book called Couples That Work. And it's not necessarily about mothering or fathering, but it's about two people who coupled, who have these great careers and they still want to couple. How, and that means like, to me, that's like diversity. How do we coexist having these very diverse lives? So that's like, sometimes I'll go off grid and read a book on couples, or I'll go off grid and go to a museum on city planning, because I think that there's stuff out there in the world that's not about mothering per se, but that's around structural development, intentional building of communities against the odds. And yeah.
There's so much systems thinking there, like how we can pull from other bodies of activism, other bodies of experience, other, you know, bodies of thinking in order to solve the problem that is in front of us. And I love your obsession with books. That was actually one thing I didn't know until I read yours, how much I laughed out loud when you told the story about your dad asking you, write down the things that you want to do and what you love, and you have 1 period reading ? 2 ? 3 ? And I was like, so relatable.
I just like digging into books. I like to, some years only read fiction, some years only reading nonfiction.
Where are you right now? Nonfiction?
I'm in nonfiction. Yeah, I'm in nonfiction for sure. Like I have Ta-Nehisi Coates's book and I have, you know, Morrison's book, and I just haven't gotten to it yet because I'm like, I just need like information, and so I'm sucking up information in nonfiction right now.
Yeah,
so.
Just in that like full cultivation, the cultivation mode. What that is making me think about is, you know, many of the experiences that you have lived and the identities that, you know, that you sit in and move through, you know, whether it is business owner, author, activist, mother, I could go on and on and on. And for you, do you find that those identities present themselves in different situations? Are you all of them at once, or one of them mainly? Like how do those things show up for you?
I've been recently thinking about that very question, writing about that very question. You're in my brain today. And what I've come up with is, I think most of the time these days I'm entering into almost every room with front loading mothering. I front load my mothering. That's the first thing you probably see and hear from me when I'm talking. And I think it's because this moment needs that the most. It needs mothering. It needs strategy around diverse communities and building them up and keeping us unified. A lot of my talks recently And I'm talking at like universities and grade schools. I'm talking at fashion brands and beauty brands. I'm talking with startup companies. And I've been not talking so much about my work. I mean, I'm chairman of the board of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. I work with Mount Sinai. I'm their COVID task force. I work with another organization that helps to provide financing for top surgery and bottom surgery.
And also you were creating inclusive beauty brands before anyone was on that train.
Yeah. And so like my work, I'm really working. I'm working a lot. I'm in work mode. But when I talk to folks, the first thing I start to talk about is really mothering. It's not so much my work CV.
Yeah.
You know.
Is there a kind of a beauty in letting that be front loaded? Like, how did you get to a place where you could let the accolades of the resume go?
So funny. I was watching I think it was something in the New York Times. It was like a collection, a group of gender nonconforming people had gotten together, all really famous, like Micheline Thomas and artists and musicians and Toshi Regan and Michelle Ndegeocello and just maybe 15, 20 of them. And someone said on that documentary how they front loaded their queerness. And I thought, oh, yeah, like, I mean, I'm gonna front load my motherness because that to me is such an identity that holds weight. And, you know, although I love my work and I love working with HRC and I love working with Mount Sinai, the work I do as a mother to me is much more global. So I got that front loading through the queer community.
Where all great things come from.
Where all great things start.
You know, when you talk about giving, you know, the talks that you're giving, the companies that you're talking to, right? And you just named so many different sectors of communities, which tells me that, as we've talked about, mothering can intentionally shift all of them. And one of the things that's really been weighing on me is the recent numbers coming out about women just needing to leave the workforce because of the care crisis in this country, which obviously disproportionately affects women of color. There is such a burden on our mothers, you know, because of what they are saddled with at this like very moment in time. And I'm curious to hear from you, how can mothers mother themselves and how can we mother mothers so that we're not losing so many brilliant women from the workforce? But I feel like it's so much bigger than the workforce.
Yeah. I mean, we are finite people, right? So women break, Black women break. And I felt that when I was in my 40s. I'm 50 now. In my mid 40s, I was like broken.
I don't believe, but can I just say I don't believe that. So.
Well, it's true.
I believe in wisdom.
But, you know, and I thought, like, you know, that women, I've been always told that women are, you know, powerful, tenacious, that we can muster it up.
Yeah. And
that we can find resources. And particularly the Black women that I know that have raised me have been exceptional. We call it Black girl magic when you see this exceptional Black female, or we call it like Black excellence. It's actually not magic. This is like, you know, it's strength for sure, and it's strategy for sure. But even that is finite at some point. And so we are breaking, women do break, Black women are exhausted. And I think we need to, the only thing that I can say has been consistent is the care that I receive from other Black women, and the care that I receive from other women, and the care that I receive from anyone who identifies as female or have female energy. Mm-hmm. And that has been like how I've been recycling and refurbishing and regenerating the energy that it takes to be in this world as a woman. I have not gotten it from my jobs. I have not gotten it from necessarily my husbands in that sense. I have not gotten it from the things that I buy that feel like guilty pleasures. The way that I've literally been able to regenerate myself is speaking to my Spelman sisters, speaking to my girlfriends in the neighborhood, stopping by for a stoop visit. My baby cousin just gave me the hug of life last night when I was crying. Like I just can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm scared. And my baby cousin just said, let me hug you. And that was a great hug.
Yeah.
I think women are the answer to women. We need to see each other, find each other, and then think in those numbers, like think collectively. I'm not one woman. No. Because this one woman would have broken yesterday. I'm like 50,000 women right now, right?
All of them. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have such an army of women behind us. Did you feel any sense of dip from not being able to have the baby cousin's hug for a few months, and still, right? Like we're still not in a normal world. How did you, and I'm asking from a very personal place, I am still trying to figure out how to navigate those women that I rely on so deeply to get me through, and I can't touch and hold and hug you and tell you I love you. It is missing, and Zoom is not cutting it.
No. Yeah, COVID is trying to take our intimacy, right? Like COVID, one of the deepest things is that it made me less intimate. And I'm kind of a insular person. I'm thinking a lot. I'm in my own space. I can sit at my desk for hours. I'm not so snuggly all the time, I hear. I'm not warm and snuggly.
Word on the street, but I don't know who's spreading that.
Yeah. But it's gotten worse in COVID. I mean, because we are able to just isolate, and we have been forced to isolate, right? And I think that the panic I had yesterday was I had to go far away from my house for some work. It was many hours away. I had to sit in a meeting with several people that I didn't really know, and then I had to be away from my home for hours and hours and hours. That sent me, and then I had to make decisions that were really big, work decisions that will affect my life that were really big. That whole day sent me into a tailspin. And I realized, gosh, I'm not even used to being away from my home base anymore for days at a time, hours at a time. Yeah, I think we need to make sure, just as much as we've stocked up on food and we've stocked up on cleaning supplies, I think we need to figure out, and every individual is different, figure out how to hold on to some of our intimacy. Mm-hmm. Practice it. I think it's a practice.
After that day that you just described of big decisions and big changes from this very insular world that you're living in, and you also mentioned your baby cousin's hug, did you reach out for that? Did she know to give it to you? Like how much do you have to go seeking for the antidote to the anxiety that you're may or may not even know that you're in?
I just started crying. I think that it was visible because you can hide behind a door. I could have gone into my room and cried. I could have worked it away. But I just sat in the kitchen. Like I sat in our space, our open space. My cousin is in my house. So we sat in the kitchen together, and I just started crying and talking. And I think she read it. Yeah. It's reciprocal for sure. Like you have to be open. You have to give someone a little bit of some inkling of what's going on. And that's why I think that when we talk about creating community spaces, whether it's in your home, like a kitchen, or whether it's like a library in your town, you have to crisis create a community center. Mm-hmm. So that in crisis, you just are already used to being in that community center. I was used to being in the kitchen. We go to the kitchen for dinner every night. We have the talks at night.
Yeah.
So I think that's, it's almost too late if we're trying to figure out in the middle of the crisis. Like right now is a good time to plan ahead for the breakdown. Be used to these like rituals of sitting down with people in the community room.
Yeah. because we're doing so much pretending and coping and trying to get by. And it's just, you know, I think exactly what you said, like that intimacy is what breaks the armor of those things. And people can see right through and really see you and see each other. And that reminds me of, you know, when we're thinking about the brilliant voices that are moving this whole country forward. Jodie, it's obviously you. You are doing it in every choice that you make, in every word that you put out. And one of the things that I came across that you said was, you know, the way that we can continue, and I'm paraphrasing, but to build the future is to really see each other. And I want to know from you what that means. Like, what does it mean to really see someone?
Well, there's so much that we don't see in life. You don't really know it until like maybe the collision is so strong you just can't deny it. But typically we don't see the other life. And there are these, you know, polar opposite worlds or lives that are happening at the same time. So here's a funny story. In the summertime, I take my kids to the same rental, the same island, the same summer rental, and we rent the same house. And 2 summers ago, I was setting up the kitchen, and I pulled open the drawer just to check and see if the silverware and the spices were there, and I found something that we had left behind the summer before, which is surprising that it survived an entire year. But what was even more surprising was that it was our kids' Afro pick. I keep this near me. It's my kids' Afro pick in the silverware drawer.
In the silverware drawer.
Yeah, in the silverware drawer, barbecue sauce on it.
Okay.
Fist of melted off from barbecuing. And so, like, I shared that with my kids. They thought it was crazy that they didn't know that the family didn't know what an Afro pick was, because we got a lot of Afros in my house, so we use the Afro pick all the time.
All the time. This is a basic
it's
tool.
Italian,
yeah.
Basic tool, and it was the basic language for us. And so the kids were like, they don't understand what Afros are. They don't clearly have Afros. And so I thought, you know, we don't see each other. We don't see each other. The dominant culture doesn't really see the marginalized culture. So white folks don't really see Black folks. Rich folks don't fully see poor people. And then the cisgender hetero world does not see the queer world. And so that was me. I didn't see my own kid, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even see the world that is existing in our own home.
Yeah.
Just either our world is too dominant, we've taken up too much space, or we haven't built up, or we just haven't taken the time.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because I know that, you know, we started this conversation from a place of fissure, right? You're talking about some of these sinkholes and these painful moments that force us to see, but how, and maybe not how, but we need to be choosing to see even without tragedy and even without hardship. And you know, what can that look like in daily choices?
Putting yourself in places that you're the minority, like intentionally making it awkward for yourself. So going into a room where you don't have the answer, you don't have the authority, you don't have the numbers. So like for me, I Googled LGBT conferences nationwide and got the whole calendar for the year, and any of the conferences that I could drive to, I would just go to them. At LGBT conference, I wasn't seasoned. I didn't know the language. I didn't know the people. I wasn't smart in that. And so I sat in the back of the room for months, just listening. And then I would go back again and go back to Philly and go back to Texas, go back to the same conferences. After months of that, and then years of that, you meet people, you make friends, right? But you also gain information, and then you gain some confidence that you've earned a place in this community. So I think it means taking yourself and placing yourself in a room where you do not dominate and where you don't have the.
Yeah.
And so that for me, my interest was to understand LGBT life, because my kid is trans. But for someone else, it might be, understanding someone who's just different from you, a culture that is different from you. And I think if whatever you are, you have to mandate that your friend group expand outside of who you are. So like if you look at your Facebook friends, most of my Facebook friends were Black, female, middle class, over 40, educated, with kids, most of them. And I was like, oh, this is good, like right on. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, my friend group doesn't even include my own child, like LGBT or trans people. Like that was a shock to me. And so then I said to myself, okay, my friend group has to expand, and it has to be like, I don't have to get rid of my friends, but it has to expand. And all of my new friends, this is so weird. All of my new friends, I told myself, had to be trans, LG, or gender nonconforming.
Yeah.
And my kids were like, Mom, that's awkward and weird. And like, you can't force us to have.
Just because you're being so intentional about it. Yeah.
And it was awkward, but look, you're not going to expand your friend group unless you understand who's not there, who's missing from the table, whose table you've never sat at, and then go there.
Yeah.
You just have to.
And absorb. I fucking love that advice. And to know that, you have been doing it in your own life, in your family, because that is something that doesn't need tragedy for every single one of us to go and do and take inventory. And also, and sit in the back and listen.
Like, some people have asked, well, what am I supposed to just go up to a trans person, tap them on the shoulder and be like, can I be your friend, or a Black person? And no, you have to be, I'm saying do it the right way. Take some time. It can be a conference, it can be a book club, it can be a cafe, but you place yourself in communities that are different from yours. Take the time to make real friends, and watch, in a year, you will have a really diverse group of friends. And then you yourself, and this is really about exposing your own blind spots, right? You'll learn something about yourself. You'll be a better person.
Yeah.
Smart.
Just everybody be a better person.
Yeah.
Just all of us. I'm so grateful.
If you can improve 1% each day, that's a goal. Just 1% each day.
Yeah. Shine a spotlight on all the places that we don't even know that we're holding the world back. Yeah. Tell me, Jodie, before we close, what is one thing that you are batshit grateful for right now, even in any and all of this?
My boyfriend. I was telling him yesterday.
Jodie, tell us about love.
And it is love. I've had love multiple times in my life, and I'm always grateful for love. But what I'm talking about is he's so supportive. I think we need people who support us, and that to me is, and there's financial support, there's logistical support, there's
was he setting
support.
Your light up at the beginning?
He was. He was setting my light stick up.
He is holding that purse.
He never tires of me, and I would not have been able to make it through COVID, even though I did break up with him right when COVID hit.
And then you got COVID and we're like, baby.
But but once I really I was in such a state of panic around COVID and being sick, but then once it settled, we made our way back to each other, and he is, he's the guy who teaches me like this 1%. That was actually his thing. I stole it from him. How can we be 1% better each day?
And the fact that you have a partner that can push that, like it is, it's the dream.
He says to me, when we first started dating, he's like, let's sit and have a regroup. And I'm like, well, what are we talking about? He's like, just a regroup. Like, we sit and we talk and we touch base with each other. I'm like, but what subjects? What are we doing? He's like, Jodie, it's just to touch base and see how we're feeling, and we could talk about anything. I'm like, but how long is that going to last? Like, do we need notes? So he's the guy in our relationship that we sit on our stoop and we just shoot the shit. I just am so happy about that for you.
Oh, we love your love. Okay, the last question that I have to know is, who is a woman or person on the rise that Woman On should have on our radar?
I really like folks that are telling stories. Najiri Brown is a storyteller. She's written for television. She is a Black woman who has a gift for seeing something that has not been told or has been sort of avoided, and then just loving that story, even if it's not her story, loving it so much that she just is compelled to bring this really complex, sometimes dark, sometimes unsettling story to light, but find the beauty in it. So Najiri Brown, storyteller, is on my radar, and I really appreciate her. Just when you dig into what she's done, you'll see what I'm talking about.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Jodie, thank you. We're so grateful for you in this world and on this show.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Mwah. Good to see you.
I'm glad you are doing this. You're the right person for this. And it's so nice that we met and stayed in touch from that first meeting. It's good stuff.
It makes me really, really thankful. And to
right,
you.
So it's almost like duh, right? Like when you have these moments when you meet someone and then you just keep resurfacing, you're like, this is life that we.
But that moment, Jodie, for me, I think on a lot, because I sat in the middle of you and Latham, and I didn't know either of you before that. Yeah. And I was like, I just hit the absolute fucking jackpot. Not only was that night my favorite, the many, many moments after that with both of you have just been really, really important for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mwah.
Love you.
Okay. Have a good day. Bye.
If you're anything like me, you love listening to inspiring stories, but then there always is this little letdown at the end of a show, because it's sort of like, well, now what? How do I put anything into action that I've just heard? Well, at Woman On, we're here to solve that. Each episode comes with a free worksheet that you can download to get dirty with all the wisdom and put it in your own life. Just go to womanoncollective.com/worksheet.